Hello and welcome to the Unwanted Opinion podcast, the show in which me and my friends give our unwanted opinions on all things film. My name is Lewis and I'm joined today with Kyle.
Hello.
Hello, and Gonzalo.
Hey, how we doing?
Hello. Guys, do you know what's really special about today?
Your chicken?
Together again.
Well, my chicken is in the oven, yes, I'm very
I
excited.
thought that was pretty special.
But, guys, this is our 100th episode. Our 100th episode doing this.
Wow.
Is it? Because I've been doing the numbers on the YouTube, and this is 101.
What? No, because on the Spotify is 100.
Oh, you forgot to put up DreamWorks on Spotify. That's what you did.
Okay, guys, this is our 101st
Well, it's fine.
episode.
We had the ones that we did.
Oh, God.
That's
That's
true.
even
Yeah,
further.
even
That's
further.
that was it.
incredible, though.
Some of the Spotify's are, let's say, halves as well. Like, we've got, 60 points.
Yeah, we have,
extra reviews, so...
True.
We could be on 108, I don't know.
And there's some
Uh,
lost
who-
episodes in
who's-
there as well. So.
Exactly. Who's keeping
I
going
mean,
anyway?
I'd rather re-edit it. This is 100 and not Godzilla times Kong.
Yeah, not Godzilla. That would be
So
much
we
nicer
can,
if it was something like this.
in our heart, we can consider this the
In our
100th
heart.
episode.
Well, great. Well,
Yeah.
on today's episode, we're just going to do, once again, a bunch of reviews. Me and Kyle saw a bunch of stuff, and we also so we got reviews for Civil War. Me and Kyle got to see that early last night for an IMAX preview. Kyle will also review the First Omen for us because he's a big Omen fanboy here, and Dev Patel's directorial debut in Monkey Man. But first, we are going to be talking about Joker 2. Joker
Full
Deluxe.
Deluxe.
I don't know how to pronounce that. We don't really do a lot of trailer discussions on this show, but
I think we did early on, but we kind of verged away from it. But I think this one's quite special to Lewis.
But
We kind of did a bunch
big
when
deal.
the MCU and when Star Wars was like in its heyday and stuff.
Yeah,
We did a lot of stuff like that, but yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I saw the trailer today. I was like, I feel there's a lot to discuss here. And Gonzalo actually didn't watch this until 2 minutes before we were on air,
Yes.
even though he had all day to watch it. But
In my defense, work was hectic today.
Okay. But anyway, because Joker as well, obviously one of the biggest R-rated films ever, one of the biggest comic book films ever, weirdly enough too. And also it's one that when we talked about our hot takes episodes, I brought that up as being a film that I don't really like and being very derivative of Taxi Driver and kind of comedy. It looks great, production's great, score's great, and but this is interesting because I wanted to bring this up too because I always thought Joker 1 was this very derivative thing. And then they announced the sequel, and I was like, right,
what are they going to do?
where can we possibly go with something like that?
Are they going to copy another Scorsese movie?
The Last Waltz? No, The Last Waltz, New York, maybe? Because that's kind of a musical. So, Gonzalo, you're fresh off it.
Yes.
What did you make of that trailer?
Well, cinematography still looks great.
Same cinematographer as last time.
Yes, fantastic job there. I don't know. I didn't really see there wasn't really a plot thoroughly showcased outside of hey, he's in a relationship with this woman now, this Harley Quinn like character. There seems to be some they seem to be pushing further onto that kind of like imagination state that we kind of saw in the first one as parts of twists.
Like it. Looks like it.
And yeah, I don't know. It's giving Chicago a lot, but yeah, I'm not really sure honestly. I'm in that point where I'm like, yeah, I mean, filmically it looks great, but so did the.
It looks like a movie.
One.
That's what you say.
It does.
Looks like a very well lit movie.
Yeah, it looks like a very well made movie. The problem will be: is it going to be a well told story? The first one left me wanting a lot. I understand like wearing your inspiration on your sleeve, and I have nothing against movies that are very heavily inspired by an idea or a cinematographer or a director or a particular film. It's just it didn't really do anything outside of just being inspired by. And its commentary when it comes to the mental health struggles and the societal issues was surface level at best and kind of problematic at worst. So I'm just interested. I'm just interested to see what this movie criticizing society is going to say now that instead of one white guy, there's two white people. So maybe.
Well, Kel, what did you make of the trailer? What did you make of the trailer?
I watched it. I was saying this to you before the show, Liz. I kind of watched it really early this morning. And then I had a kind of a rewatch because I was like, what actually happened in this trailer? And like you say, Gopal, there's not much kind of really kind of shown here. You can maybe piece together parts of it. What I'm interested by, which I'm a bit kind of skeptical, which you haven't mentioned, is I know the Joker is not really meant to be, it's not very core to the kind of story or the comic sort of film, but I always liked the aspect that Harley was his psychiatrist, and it was almost his manipulation into this fantasy that he has that she fell in love with. In this, it seems that she's a patient as well in Arkham. So I'm a bit like, okay, I'm not against change. I'm fully. I mean, I'm not against change, but maybe I'll talk something about change later. But I was very intrigued, and then I also said to Lewis when he first asked me, like, what was your first thing? I went, well, they've gone down the Mean Girls route of not advertising it as a musical currently.
Yes, that's true.
You know,
that's true.
And I think
really get them singing it.
Well, because Lewis said, I'm sure he can even say it, but like obviously out with like mainstream fans who are maybe up to date on like Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, that knew this was a jukebox musical. How many people know? Like my dad said, my dad assumed to be music because Gaga was cast as Harley, and that's how he kind of linked the two.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of how I felt. Like intrigued, but not like I wasn't jumping at it.
It's interesting because look, it actually looks and visually speaking really good, especially towards the end of the trailer. Like the spotlight and stuff, him and the piano and her at the piano and stuff, that stuff. Very clearly, the umbrella shots very inspired by Umbrella of Cherbourg. You have the La La Land inspiration there as well, and you've got, like you're saying, Chicago's very clearly there.
Cabaret kind of
Gotham, you still got that gritty Gotham aesthetic from the first film too.
I very much like that Gotham. I thought that was also great. Kind of,
It's
like you were saying, in terms of plot, we obviously, this is a first trailer. We're not going to get much here with that. Obviously, you know, we can guess. Like you're saying, I mean, look, then changing Harley Quinn to a patient. Look, Arthur Fleck is like nothing like the Joker in any adaptation I've ever read of the comic books, because the Joker's
not an adaptation purist, and even less when it comes to comic books, because there are so many versions of characters even within the canon of the DC universe. Like, do whatever the fuck you want as long as you're telling a good story. I will say one thing: I would be more excited about this movie if I hadn't watched the Joker.
The first Joker.
Yes. If this trailer came out and I knew nothing about the first Joker and it hadn't happened and I just watched this, I would be like, shit, this looks awesome. I'm really intrigued.
I'll tell you one thing I really hope this film does, which I hope Todd Phillips has learned a lot after directing that first film, and maybe, he was nominated for Best Director, I have no idea how, but anyway, that year, a travesty. But I hope he does something clever with this, because obviously we already know after that first film as well that a lot of this plays in Arthur's head, and obviously with the big music numbers and all the big, like, it looks like a theater and a musical, and their own costumes and things. Obviously we can clearly see that as delusion, and that's in his head. I really hope he plays with it though. I hope he surprises us with something where we go, oh my god, wait, that's actually real, something. I want him to be clever with it, which is hard to ask from Todd Phillips, and I mean, no disrespect, come on. Anyway,
I'm also interested in that stuff. Like, I feel like it could explore a lot of interesting aspects just by the little bits of the premise we know. It's a musical. It's about these characters, and we have the whole idea of like him as a character struggling with his speech. We know that, like, from real life, like a lot of people that have like speech impediments and stutter, music and singing really does help them overcome that and stuff. So it could be interesting to see if, like you say, they play with the idea of like subverting the expectations of this is in his head, and suddenly there is a performance that he does do in real life. It's also the whole idea of a stage. He was presented as like a wannabe comedian in the first one. The whole, like, there could be a lot of metaphor done with like the idea of like putting someone on a stage when he's like this new figure that apparently inspired revolution or whatever, like there could be a lot that they could do. Now,
will they do it? We'll see the aftermath of what he actually did in that first film, which will be interesting to see.
Yeah,
but just wanted to add as well. I mean, this thing is 4 times the budget of the first film, coming at $200 million somehow. Even though it looks the same.
Yeah,
I don't know how they've done that, but
I mean,
do we have a runtime? Do we have a runtime?
No, but I mean, could you, if you're thinking about it, right? We don't know what. Apparently there's going to be 15 songs in this jukebox musical. You have to remember that I'm right. I'm not saying
the song rights. I guess.
But seriously, you got to pay all the song rights. We've seen in it that the sets seem to be a lot more elaborate, kind of more joyful. Obviously, Phoenix in recent years is probably deserving a bit more of dosh.
Salary.
Gaga probably wants to be a bit more dosh. I know. Yeah, Steve Coogan. I know it's ridiculous, but then I'm like. Logistically, I could see where increases are provided. I do think 200 is stupid, but then we need
advertising or like with.
Usually it is. Usually it's outside of advertising. Usually you have to include. It's like 50% maybe added on.
Right. Very very quickly before we move on, will this make roughly the same amount or less than the first Joker film?
I don't know.
I think Gaga might bring people in, to be fairly honest.
Bring in a different type of audience to this.
True.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. I think you'll have people who really enjoyed the first film. I know, like you said, you guys, I still quite enjoy it, but it's because I wasn't really aware of Taxi Driver or The King Comedy beforehand. I now see it. But then, like the issue, the annoying thing is for me is I saw that first, so I don't have that kind of sour taste that you guys do. But then there'll be other people who'll be kind of going, holy shit, and Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn, they'll be kind of like, and it's a musical, that brings in other people's kind of...
Yeah.
I don't see it breaking $1 billion, not a chance.
You don't think it'll break $1 billion? Okay.
I see a solid 800-ish.
Okay.
Maybe, but if the hype lids up, it could break the $1 billion.
Yeah. It could really go either way. It depends on what's releasing around the same time. Because if it's like a complete garbage, it might just lose a lot there. But
there's a lot of competition around its October release.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's an October release and stuff, and it's a fairly big movie. You'll get all the comic book fans.
IMAX 70mm as well, so it's gonna have those filled out.
Yeah.
Depends if Kraven the Hunter really just blows everybody's mind going.
Is that coming out the same month? I thought it was August.
I think it's August. Well, that's what I'm saying. It could just keep going. They might just do like a June 2 and it's just...
If it is coming out the same month, then I can predict that this does better than Kraven the...
When you get proven wrong, I'm going to be there.
I am dreading very much the idea that people on edgelords on Instagram will have more screenshots to put weird quotes to, and I am not looking forward to
hope this film
kind of
undoes the sort of love the incel culture has for that first film. It kind of inverts that.
I don't know if they will.
I mean, literally in this trailer, he says, "I'm not alone anymore."
It's a crime in the incel community. You're not allowed to not be an incel. So
Anyway, let's move on to Civil War here. So, like we said, me and Kel saw this earlier in the IMAX preview. Civil War. So this was written and directed by Alex Garland, of course, most famously known for Ex Machina and Annihilation, and did Men a couple years ago as well. So, in this story, we have America who's been amid a civil war for some time now, an undisclosed amount of time they've been at war. Towns and streets are now barren, the economy's completely crumbled, and there's multiple factions sort of vying for power, and mainly these ones are the Western forces, which consist of Texas, California, and the Loyalist states. And then so we follow this jaded veteran war photographer Lee, who's played by Kristen Dunst, and her colleague Joel, who's played by Wagner Moura, and they kind of set out on this dangerous road trip in order to hopefully interview the president, who's played by Nick Offerman here, before the rebel forces reach the White House. Accompanying them is another expert journalist, Sammy, who's played by Stephen Henderson, and also this aspiring photographer who really idolizes Lee, Jesse, who's played by Kaylee Spenny, whose sort of innocence is soon to be sort of shattered on this journey into the violent core of America. So, Kyle, what were your overall thoughts on Civil War?
What a film. I'm going to go straight into it. I've seen the trailer a good few times whenever I kind of was. Obviously they play it a lot in the IMAX kind of viewings of that trailer.
Yes.
And I was always very, very interested to see what we kind of went with this. And I think Lewis will talk about it later on. Maybe where some people might not like it. I was so immersed immediately into this world, and I thought the perspective of the war photographers is so unique. And Kirsten Dunst's character, that kind of veteran who's been all over the kind of, I'm guessing, kind of Middle East and kind of South African kind of vibe.
Yeah.
You never get specifically told what countries, but you see photos and you can kind of piece together stuff.
Yeah, but you kind of
brief flashback.
And the kind of brilliance, the brilliantness of not knowing who is the enemy, because it's so like not even us knowing who the enemy is, but it's like
an impartial force going through this. So you're not biased in any way. Yeah,
you're not biased in any way, and it's just visually really good. Sound, I think that's maybe the first thing Lewis said when he came out of the cinema.
The sound design this is Oscar worthy. Like
that's exactly.
I was like, oh my god, you really.
Oh no, seriously, good follow.
Feel it. Yeah.
Every bullet sound felt like that atomic blast in Oppenheimer. That's how powerful a single bullet was in this film.
That's good. That's
and you
don't see very often in action movies. Like
it's
impact of that. Yeah, it really
exactly. See, maybe in more of like a John Wick, it just happens so quickly.
Yeah, and the thing they do with the sound suppressors that just
you
really feel the impact of every bullet.
Oh my god! It actually gives you. I actually scared myself a few times with the sound of it. The characters are beautiful.
Will have really good sound.
Sorry, the characters are just kind of beautiful. This kind of road trip, aesthetic kind of almost vibe, where, like I said, the four characters kind of join together. You got the naivety of Jessie, who's like such kind of young spark, and she doesn't really know exactly what to do. She's a bit, she gets annoyed at herself when she kind of freezes up if she doesn't take a photo. And then, what was the other guy? Was it Joel? Was it Joel the other? Who's the journalist, and he's the kind of, he has this sort of like almost excited energy around him at times.
Yeah, I want to get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll let you take over there, Lewis, because I don't want to say too much. But I want to stop because I'm going to get going too much here.
Well, I'll start with the thing I think which will be most contentious about this thing, is that Garland does not delve into the circumstances or politics as to why America is at war. You get no context. You're just in it with these people.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people kind of saw the trailers and be like, oh, I wonder the lore behind this. Why is America? Yeah. You don't get any of that.
That's kind of genius. Yeah.
You don't get, so don't go in thinking you're going to get a history lesson here, because you're not.
Yeah.
So instead the film it's like a lived-in world, as we encounter civilians and fighters throughout the entire journey.
You get snippets, it's been 14 months.
Yeah, and the ongoing conflict is sort of like affected and corrupted certain people further.
It's kind of like the best part of Fallout, where like you never know who fired the first nukes or why it happened or anything, because it doesn't.
I'm pretty sure you do. I'm pretty sure that was China, but
in the later ones, but I don't count those because they're bad games.
Anyways, go ahead.
You're literally in there. It feels like a genuine and lived-in world. You're meeting all these strange people on the road, as well as and you don't even know what kind of side they're fighting for, and you get little tidbits of information, like all just situational. They talk about money and certain things and what's money.
Brilliant scene. That was brilliant.
It's nothing. None of it's literally summed down as an exposition scene for you to tell you this is why this is this way now. You just have to figure it out, and also you're given little information, and you sort of have to deal with that.
I agree. I just wanted to jump on that part. Where you're saying one part I thought was really great is that they're discussing what questions to ask the president, and it's through all those questions that you maybe learn some actions that have been done through this war.
Yeah,
that was brilliant as well. Very much that kind of like that money scene that you were saying.
Like you're saying, Kyle, I think the characters, once again, with the whole aesthetic, the way this thing is shot, the way they decide Garland has written this script, they feel very genuine. They feel like real people, and things would get really tense, and you're along this entire journey with them. But also, they are very morally questionable. They have flaws. Like you're saying with Kyle, with the Joel character, you see him become enthused at the sound of warfare and wanting to be at the front lines, and he gets almost like a high off it, which is like
very much so. On top of his usual high that he gets during the film, he's a bit of a pothead.
But yeah, it's like it's also like I mean, one of the standout scenes is the whole Jesse Plemons scene, which you've seen in the trailer. They sort of they encounter this Jesse Plemons character, and sort of with that, like it's sort of this whole journey into like how would this conflict radicalize certain people as well. And I love that thing. And you have this story of like ambition with the Jesse character and this loss of innocence, and it all like. And I think the biggest theme actually here, you'd think it would be some sort of political thing, some sort of history thing, but it's more like the desensitization of violence. I think that's the biggest critique here, because we sort of see that with the Lee character, and then you see that with another character, sort of this transformation, and that's kind of, I think, kind of the biggest thing Garland's talking about here is sort of America as a place become this, you know, violence doesn't seem to affect anyone anymore, and I've sort of got.
Well, there's a scene in the trailer where they go into a shop and they're like, "Don't you know there's a pretty severe civil war going on?" And it's like that sort of thing you're talking about, Lewis, where it's like, "Oh, yeah, you know, but it's who cares?" And
but I think there's something interesting with that as well, because obviously when violence isn't happening to them, it's exciting, but then when they are faced with the violence, it becomes something quite harrowing. And also you have this Lee character as well, who's like someone who felt really comfortable depicting this stuff when she's abroad, but then when it comes to her own home, the dynamic completely changes. It's something that she finds very, very distressing and hard to document.
That sounds like a lot of really interesting and nuanced
it's
this
I want to say
so good.
just like see on top of the just on a filmmaking, we were talking about this during some of the, I say in quote, action scenes, because they're not really in the action, they're just observing it. It breaks up so well with the use of the photography, where they'll take a shot and then it jumps to like a black and white image of that shot, and then it goes to complete silence, and then it jumps back into it. And I mean, I remember we were coming out, we were saying that that really helps with these kind of intense scenes. It's almost like it gives you like a wee break, and it's like a snippet into what they're taking back from it.
I was gonna ask if they use like the idea, because like obviously like we're following these war photographers basically documenting this thing, like whether it uses like the cameras itself and like the kind of thing to tell part of the story.
And I think that's obviously a major thing, especially with the Jessie character as well, and her sort of evolution. When especially the final sort of set pieces, where the way they use the camera there is like, it's like a really, you know, if you're watching like a huge concert piece and it's like a really well timed break, and it's literally the second or two, but it goes like all this commotion, all this crazy violence and noise happening, and it goes duh, duh, and then back into the violence. Like it gives these, because look, this isn't a super, you know, this is a $50 million film. There's only so much you can do with this spectacle here, but with that stuff, it sort of adds this really cool rhythm to the action, which I thought was really interesting. I love that whole stuff, and using that photography and getting these pictures, and what is the public going to see, and you get to see that too. I think that stuff is excellent. I thought it was great directing.
There was a really good, like really like simple game that recently came out. That's like kind of like a flash game. It's all about like taking pictures for the news, and like you just have a bunch of people moving around, and depending of what you photograph and what appears in the camera, it kind of changes everyone's perspective and idea of reality. So I feel like through media, it's really nice. Like it's a really hard thing to do, to communicate this whole idea of like how just the idea of that photograph that you're using to tell that story, what are you choosing to tell, how that changes what you're telling completely, and changes the way people look at it. So it's really, really good that they actually managed to say something with that, because I feel like it's such an interesting theme, and it has so much potential to have your characters be literal war photographers within a war that is happening to their country, like something that they might have opinions of and about, and that's affecting them and stuff. Like it's really interesting, because a lot of war photography is done by basically tourists. Like it's people who are foreign to this conflict, so it's easier to see things in a more black and white way, or see who's right, who's wrong, take sides, that kind of stuff, or just be completely impartial, because it's not happening to you. You don't have that history, that culture. So it's really, like, honestly, I was really excited about the film just from the premise, and I'm really happy to hear that they fucking choose that shit. Yeah.
Well,
you know,
Kyle, what are you gonna give Civil War?
it is getting a solid 9 out of 10. I thought this was just incredible. There are some scenes, I mean, I would love maybe in a few months, maybe the end of the year, we do our top best, we can maybe dive into a bit more spoilers, especially once Gunfallow's seen it. Because I think there's definitely some scenes, extra scenes we want to talk about more in depth. I loved all those characters. I wish I got to spend more time with them because it's only about an hour 50 or something like that. It's relatively short.
I think it would be longer, yeah.
It feels long, but not in the sense that it feels long. You're like, oh my god, it's not like it's not like if Beale Street Could Talk sort of thing where you think it's like 18 hours and it's only been 2. But I really loved it. I thought the characters were amazing. I just as a film, it's incredible how they made it and the message they got across. So a 9 out of 10, brilliant.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you, Kyle. I think it gets a 9 from me too.
You were bouncing yesterday. You said you were bouncing a wee bit.
Yeah, I was between 8 and 9, but I think the ending. I'd like to talk about the ending if we can. But anyway,
I know.
Like the road trip structure, the road trip structure, and the idea of having these guys as war photographers was a great way to sort of contextualize us and put us in this world and see what's happened and how the America's transformed. I love that stuff. And the strongest thing, we're talking about all those themes. There's constantly ideas like floating about. Like it's all a very focused film, but it's those characters. Garland's characters are so well written. Like they feel really genuine. They're really interested in these people. All 4 of them are really fascinating characters and really brilliant. And even the little tidbit characters we only see like 5-10 minutes of down the road. Like that Jesse Plemons character is a standout scene. Like that stuff is great. I really, really commend his character.
You need to see this Gunfallow as soon as you can. That's all I'm saying.
And also, whenever you talked about things like the scenes of tension as well, it's a really, really tense film. When
there's an amazing scene which questions, like we said, the side of them, and it's like I don't care what side they're on. They're shooting at me. I'm shooting at them.
It's like boiling conflict down to its absolute simple basic. That person's trying to kill me, so we're going to try and kill them. It's that simple. I love that sort of like.
And there's a time there's like it's not a comedic film, but there are a couple of jokes that they just deliver very well, which I thought was quite good. Especially with Press, which
because his previous films, that's the thing that I really love about the writing in those films, is that you both manage to get very engaging and human characters, but at the same time you get people that embody a theme and carry that thematic. Because you guys know how much I fucking love like themes.
Well, you'd enjoy Civil War then.
I am.
Yeah.
Is it coming out? Is it coming out this weekend in Spain? Yeah. Surely it is. I think
it's the 19th. Yeah.
I was looking up. Lewis, do you know why it's coming out on the 12th of April? I expect you would probably know.
No, I didn't know.
On the 12th of April, 163 years ago, is when the Civil War started.
Oh, clever.
Yeah, also, I just saw that on the wee tidbit fact.
This is A24's biggest budget film they've ever produced. This is a $50 million film, and I think it's going to open to their biggest film. It's going to be their biggest opening. Film. I think it's predicted about 20 to 25 million.
Beau's Afraid was maybe about 40-ish. I think that's last.
Like domestically speaking.
No. I mean budget-wise. I think Beau's Afraid was the biggest at like 40-ish.
Yeah, so this is a big foray into.
Their biggest box opening so far has been.
It's Hereditary, I think.
Yeah,
I think Hereditary was their biggest opening. Yeah, but
anyway,
Kyle, let's talk about the first.
Oh man, 2 weeks, man! You guys gotta wait 2 weeks before we talk about this movie.
Right.
I was so jealous. Okay.
The fellows, sit down. Get prepared. The First Omen. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yes. So the First Omen is a prequel to the 1976 The Omen, directed by Richard Donner, obviously, of Superman fame. The joke is he made this film, got a bit depressed, then had to go make a cheerful Superman movie. I'm going to keep it spoiler free as much as I can up to a point, and then we're going to have to go into spoilers, just because I need to I need to vent slightly. So the First Omen follows a young American woman called Margaret, played by Neil Tiger Free, which I just think is a fantastic name. Literally, it's like it is Nell Tiger Free. Insane, amazing. The film gets a point for that. Who is a young American woman and is sent to Rome to begin a life of service to the church. Okay. don't know if that sounds something familiar to you, Lewis. That's
I was just listening to that. I was like, this sounds like a film a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
It is a film. It is a bit like a film you. Well, we'll talk. And yeah, so Margaret's sent by her kind of father-ish figure, Cardell Lawrence, who played by Bill Nye.
Nice guy.
Yeah, we'll talk about him later. And she basically kind of goes to an orphanage in the kind of role and joins the sisterhood, and suspicious things start happening. Ooh, you know. And then she's kind of enlisted by Father Brennan, played by Ralph Lenson, who, if you don't know, Father Brennan was originally in the original Omen, played by Patrick Thingamajig, who is known as the Second Doctor. His name's just gone from my head. And Father Brennan kind of enlists Margaret Helps to kind of figure out what this church is going on. That is the general premise. I'm going to give some pros, I'm going to give some minor cons that avoid spoilers, and then we're going to have to go into spoiler territory because there are some things in this film that it does which are really great, and then there's some things they do that are really bad. Pros.
For anyone who's wanting to watch this film, do you have to watch The Omen to watch this film, or can you just watch it?
I say it's better if you don't, because if you do watch The Omen, you get quite annoyed. And this is also this is what I was saying, is that, because obviously, The Omen is my favourite horror film of all time. I love that film so much, which I think maybe this may be a slight biased review, I'm just saying, but you're getting it. Pros. Set design is great. You are definitely in 70s Rome. You have the vibe. You have nothing there to tend to suggest it's otherwise. I was a bit happy when they opened it. They were using the same font as they did in the 1976 film. The kind of giving that a wee bit. The sound and the score was amazing. I thought they'd actually did a really good job in it, especially the kind of horror aspects provided. The performances overall were solid. Bill Nye. He was just playing Bill Nye. I felt that it was a very much like a Christopher Walken Dune Part 2, where he just showed up, said the lines and left, and I was like, why have this? Why have this here? Cinematography, she does brilliant with what she has, which is something I can get onto later. The cons of this film. Oh, right. So see down to the core. It's a solid horror film. I think this is why it's getting quite good reviews. That a lot of people are seeing this as a really solid horror flick. What it isn't is a good Omen prequel, which is ironically what it's meant to be.
Yeah. So it would have worked better if it hadn't been connected to the Omen universe.
Yes, which is why you should just go see Immaculate. which is what I'm saying. Because as Lewis noticed, it does share a lot of similarities to it. But yes, so anyway, this church is basically trying to birth the Antichrist, as we know. Not to spoil anything, but it's a prequel to a film about it, so they are successful in a certain way. And Margaret notices that there's a girl called Selena. I can't remember. It's like an Italian kind of name, and she suspects that this small girl. Okay. I'm going to start going into some spoilers. If you haven't seen it, you can stop here. Come back and let's talk about Monkey Man. This film's set in 1971. I know this 12-year-old girl is not going to give birth to a child that is meant to be born this year, by the way. I'm just saying, the plot twist of it, the mother actually being Margaret, is so obvious that I didn't realise it was a twist until the twist happened. This is the sort of thing that you're kind of going into.
The red herring doesn't work if you don't see
it. It doesn't work when you see it's coming, okay? The horror aspect of this film, right? I want to get to this. This is a bit annoying for me. The horror in the original Omen, I was about to say the first Omen, the original Omen is so subtle. There's no kind of demonic presence there. It's hidden. It's hidden in the fact that there's a Rottweiler that maybe it's the atmosphere. The deaths are very kind of almost what you now see as a Final Destination, where it almost looks like an accident. And there's an innocent looking child, nothing to do with it, but you know there's sinister beings behind it.
That's kind of the key itself, the fact that the kid looks so innocent, and I think that's a big departure of some of the sequels and stuff. Like, if you don't make the kid look nice,
don't even talk to me about the remake, because that just throws out the whole point. This film has too much actual. It needs to have a demonic presence there, because it needs to be a modern horror film, right? That's what this kind of, because a modern horror film fan might watch the original Omen and think it's a bit boring or slow, and that's what I'm annoyed with, and it takes away from it. Like I said, there's this twist.
Get more like a Conjuring kind of thing, where like
you get like her seeing dead people. You get her seeing this kind of demon jackal. But basically, the twist is that she is the mother, but she's not showing pregnancy at all. And then on the 6th of June at 6 a.m., like 5 hours after she discovers she is the mother, her belly just grows into a full 9-month term thing. And I'm like, that is what you call lazy writing, people, because you didn't know how to deliver it. Here you go. The canon resetting in this film is actually almost insulting for what they had to, from what the prequel they had to do. I rewatched the first film. Father Brennan in the first film literally says to Richard Thorne's character that I saw the birth of your son. He was born from a jackal. I saw the son's mother. And the whole point of the original Omen is it's meant to be a baby boy born from a jackal. Because the idea of it is a demonic presence in the form of a human, but it's not a human birth. In this, they switch it where they have a weird CGI jackal monster impregnating women that are there trying to then produce the Antichrist.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, this is something that some people might not have an issue with, but for me, because of like my love for the original, this is where I struggled with. There's a death in it that is almost identical to the original Omen's nanny's death, where she just jumps off, hangs herself after yelling "It's all for you." Except in this one, they had to add a wee bit of spice, where before they do it, she sets herself on fire, then jumps and hangs herself. And I'm like, no, but seriously, that's literally, I was sitting there going, you're doing the same death, but you're just adding a bit of spice to it. And I'm like, what's the point?
Okay?
It's not creative.
It's less creative. There's something
I know.
It's like, yeah.
But it's just, she sets herself on fire, then hangs herself. I'm like, what's the point?
Anyway, or a bit extra, okay? People want a little bit of attention.
What kind of annoys me is that I was kind of wondering, is this a prequel to a new Omen? Like, is that what they're doing here?
Yeah.
That's what I assumed.
But there are scenes where they're, in the end, when the child is born, they're taking him to Rome, and they have a photo of the original actor who played Richard Thorne in the 76. So it is meant to be a direct link.
Okay.
However, what I'm going to give this credit to is what they say of why the church did it. Okay? So I have issues with Father Brennan's character, because I really thought this would be his story. Because in the original film, we believe that he's a part of this church up until the birth, and then he goes into that severe paranoia. Have you seen it? When they go to see the flat he's living in, every single part of the wall is covered in a Bible verse. I wanted to see what led him to this point. And there's sprinkles of what it could be.
Someone who believes thoroughly in the faith and like thinks that they're doing the right thing.
Here's the thing. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what the reasoning for it is, which I really like. So he's talking to Margaret, and he's explaining that this isn't a church that worships Satan. That's not what it is. It is almost a radical group of the church that have decided that it lays out the idea that there's protests happening, and that the students in Rome are kind of verging away from the church and verging away from religion. And he basically goes, the church doesn't like that, because they kind of rely on prayer to kind of fund them almost, and the kind of money and all that such. So they decide, and they're wondering, how do we bring people back to faith? We make them fear. Right?
That's literally a plot point from a comedy.
Yeah, but the idea is that it's like, they're going to bring in the Antichrist to then verge people back to, and I'm like, that kind of makes sense. Like, they're not doing it for the end of the world.
From Netflix inside joke where the Catholic Church hires them to create a robotic version of hell to scare people into going back to church.
And it is like familiar. Yeah, it sounds like something I've heard before.
It is, but I'm kind of like, in this scenario, it kind of works, because it kind of gives you a reason for the original birthing of the Antichrist in the first one, which you don't really know why he is. He's kind of there. And this is. this is the thing. I personally feel that this film takes away from what was special of the original. However, I can see it being a great horror film on its own. In comparison, it does share a lot of similarities of Immaculate. That's what I said with you, Lewis. That that's why I asked you a few days ago.
I was like, do they do the whole 9-month thing? I was like, yeah, the film was split into trimesters, so I was like, thing. Why
which was, and I was like, I need to know. Well, obviously they kind of fail for that here. It's the kind of director's. I'm gonna give it a 6. It insults me in a lot of different ways, but I can appreciate it is a good film.
It's a good horror film. That's interesting.
It is a good horror film. Well, see, this is why I kind of actually wanted you almost to go and see it, because I was wondering how.
Let's see it from the perspective of someone who hasn't seen it.
Well, not the original Omen, but almost like if you're not. I've seen the original Omen a good few times. I could probably give a.
I've only seen it once, so.
I could give a good follow scene by scene, discussion.
I don't know the quotes and the plot, all the exact plot points.
I could literally tell you scene by scene what that movie is and all the plot and all the characters, which is why for me, it's not the Omen prequel I wanted. Is it a good Omen prequel? Sure. Does it suggest sequels? Kind of, which I'm very interested by.
Yeah. Do we know if it was the case that it wasn't originally an Omen prequel, and then they kind of?
It was always originally an Omen prequel.
Okay.
It started in like 2018. The production.
It's also interesting to me because, like, given the themes of the Omen and how subtle it is and stuff, like this could have been a really interesting story about like corruption and the idea of like evilness, like corrupting the most holy of like. It could have been.
I would have loved it if you started from
apocalyptic. We have in real life we have sects of the Catholic Church, specifically more Christian than Catholic, that are obsessed with the idea of the apocalypse and the rapture and bringing it to happen. Like there's people who are praying for the apocalypse to happen because they want to go to heaven and everyone else to burn. So it could have been an interesting idea to have this kind of idea of like maybe this devil that is being like the Antichrist that is being summoned and stuff. Like it's the devil corrupting the holiest of like institutions and like bringing that devilness into the church. Like it seems like you could have done a really like interesting like almost political thriller kind of like thing, but with the horror elements and still kept it.
You could have easily done it. I would have loved it if it was from Father Brennan's perspective and he was already in it. That you do a twist that he's in the horror and then he gets out, and then that's where we go into the original. If this does get a sequel, which they kind of tease that there's a material there for a sequel.
Do you think they're doing spin-offs? Do you think they're gonna try?
I will be intrigued at what they do, because they have a major plot point, because she doesn't just birth a son, she births twins, and one of them's a girl. And I'm like, well, what are they planning to do here?
I'm personally quite intrigued because you had me. It's a good horror film, and Immaculate was something where I thought the horror aspect was really weak on that, whereas the idea is really interesting. So this is something that actually kind of appeals to me. So I actually am gonna check this out absolutely. But look, I will quickly do Monkey Man before we sign off here. So
yes, chickens.
I know. Monkey Man is the directorial debut of Dev Patel, as also written by Dev Patel, as well as John Folie and Paul Angonella. Sorry if I mispronounced that. And look, it's a really fascinating story behind this entire production thing. This thing almost broke Dev Patel. He's discussed in interviews and stuff before he put blood, sweat, and tears into something like this, because Netflix were the people who actually paid $30 million for this film.
Oh wow!
And they funded it. I think it got funded by multiple production companies. Netflix acquired it. Then I think last year Netflix dropped it completely. They're just like, we're not distributing this film anymore. So completely broken. Jordan Peele of all people saw a rough cut of the film and went,
Monkey Paw.
I have to see this fully realized vision. So he went to Universal, and Universal then acquired this film for $10 million, which, by the way, it broke in its opening weekend in the States.
Great.
So that's already covered the cost of that. So Netflix, which I don't understand. Watching this film, I mean, already spoilers, it's quite good. I don't understand why Netflix would drop something like this, because it seems right up the alley for Netflix.
I saw an article. Apparently, there were people who weren't happy about the political messages of
We'll get to
India,
that.
which apparently is the reason Netflix dropped it.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Which is, we'll get to that in a minute. Well, anyway, so the
International
synopsis, so the film opens with Dev Patel's character, the kid, and that's all you know him as the kid, is being told, as a young boy, he's being told the story of Hanuman by his mother. And in this tale, we're told Hanuman reached up to the sky to grab a mango and ended up taking the sun and ate the sun. And so it was the gods Indra struck Hanuman with a thunderbolt, killing him for eating the sun, but was eventually resurrected by Lord Shiva. We then jump ahead years into the future. The kid is now fighting in an underground arena, living in the slums and being paid basically to throw fights. However, the kid's motives soon become clear as he intends to vanquish the government's corrupt forces and take revenge on the man who killed his mother and destroyed his village. So, as a directorial debut, Monkey Man is very impressive. Like, this be your first film. Wow. Patel's like story is focused, and it's filled with like this vicious, gory, intense action. Like, this is very up close and personal, shaky cam type action, which has this sort of ferocious intensity and. At time, I mean, for the most part, the action is very, very good. I'll say that for to start with. Like, I know shaky cam stuff can be very, very disorientating and throw a lot of people off. But it's done with a lot of precision here. You know,
as long as it's the opposite to Born Legacy, I'm good. Yeah.
Yes, it's not the Born Legacy. It's more Born Identity. You know, the better ones. And like, you get some really, this is rated 18 here in the UK, so you get really nasty kills where you're like, okay, they're going that far. Jesus, they're doing that with a toilet, they're doing that with a knife. Wow, okay. Patel, with the violence, ferocious, a great leading man. He is kind of this guy who commands the screen with nothing to lose and like really has a great on-screen presence. And also something quite interesting, because obviously, you know, when you see all these action heroes and stuff, and they all have these massive bodies and extreme 8-packs, and we just saw Jake Gyllenhaal in Roadhouse, and he's got this extreme like body. It felt weird. This is kind of weird, but like, he had this really kind of natural physique of like someone who, you know, is a good fighter, but obviously not super buff and all that stuff. Yeah, like that's a believable figure. You get me? Which I liked. Very similar, weirdly, to Poor Things. I kind of want to bring up as a weird thing. This feels like a really progressive step, a progressive film. We're sort of dealing with trans representation here, and there's this and the way we deal with it is very soulful and very impactful. Sort of into the second, the third act, he sort of meets this trans community, and I really like there's this really good quote as well. Someone talks about Shiva, who's both man and woman, and they kind of discuss how back in thousands, hundreds of years ago back, you know, people didn't consider this weird at all. It was normal. And now people consider it strange. And I just thought that was really fascinating. And that's the sort of involved with a very soulful part of the journey for the kid. So we kind of has to look inwards in order to eventually fight back outwards.
Very beautiful, like, bringing his journey to like these idea of the stories like he grew up with, and like the myths that he grew up with, and the religion that he grew up around. Like, it's really impactful.
I like that. I really like that portion of the story, which isn't really action heavy stuff. And they have a great sort of like not really Rocky montage training fight, but this cool thing when sort of like he finds the rhythm to fight again through this guy playing the drums. Really great stuff. Anyway, but not all of it comes together. Like I was saying, with the majority of the action, it's solid. Some of it does kind of go a bit too cam, and there's this entire car chase sequence which is just like it's just sadly not very good. You can't really follow any of it. It's kind of just like all over the place. Which I
want to ask, do you know if they had like specific, like if he was working with specific like action directors, if he was just
I'm unsure about that, to be fair. I'm unsure
it
about
would
that.
make sense if he's a first-time director and he's doing the action himself. Like action directing is like some of the fucking hardest things.
Yeah, to do, and he's also doing the fighting and starring it and wrote it and produced it and all that stuff. So yeah.
Also with a smaller budget, I wouldn't be surprised if things like that, without having the foreknowledge and like experience, that's not an easy thing to do in the slightest.
No, absolutely not. And I like, this is a first film, and that in itself is remarkable. That especially some of the choreography in this is fantastic.
I mean, we see billion-dollar movies do worse at action.
I also say with the villains, they also aren't particularly interesting. They have very little screen time actually, and it doesn't really delve like the film does deal with relevant Indian politics, especially with the nationalist right-wing movement, as well as religious violence that's sort of been going on around there in that region for years and years and years. But it doesn't really delve too deep into it. It's all very kind of surface level. I think it shows kind of like real life news clips and things like that. And yeah,
it's like the background too. It's more like world building than main theme. Okay.
But the villain aspect is kind of weak. And you do have this. Well, the story's solid enough. There's also because he has to infiltrate this hotel in order to get up to these higher ups and higher officials, so he kind of gets a job through this hotel. And then they're also dealing with the sex trafficking story, which isn't. It's kind of weird because like you know what's happening, but then it's just I don't know. It feels like, and then he kind of has this very sort of not really romance, but sort of just constant gaze with one of the sex workers, and that portion of the story as well doesn't feel really like well realized. It feels a bit murky, is the best way I can put it. And kind of like you were saying, Netflix dropping this because of how perceived in India. It's interesting because it still has not got a release date for India. I think it was meant to come out next week in India. They've still not approved it, and it still needs to go like back and forth. America and India need to approve. The thing. I think they want changes to the film. They want edits.
I've just got a quick question though. See how you're kind of. I know, like you're saying, it's not perfect. Is there a part of you that kind of lets some of it slide because of it being a very ambitious directorial debut? The fact that he directed it, did the screenplay and story, and you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to be honest though. I have to tell you how the film.
Of course, yeah. But
I do want to ask you. Wasn't. You know how I feel.
Just lie to us.
Directors that also star in their own films. Do we get that weakness here? Because I'm not a big fan of when the director.
You're not. You don't like it. No.
I think it's It tends to lead to a lot of self-indulgence.
That's right. Okay, I'll tell you one thing. The film is not self-indulgent. I'll give it absolutely that. It's absolutely not self-indulgent. I can see what you mean. You usually would get these. Those would tend to be very personal stories and those sort of things. Yeah. Dev Patel is a massive action film fan, and I think this is just sort of. I mean, and maybe to look more into it, but this is sort of. He kind of just wanted to, become an action star and sort of tell this story, and this was something aided by a lot of people like Jordan Peele and his other writers as well, who helped him sort of push the story up. And also I think it was Jordan, no, who was it, one of the writers encouraged him to direct it, because Dev Patel originally wrote a draft, gave it to one of his writer friends who I think is credited here, to sort of go over it, and then they were sort of looking for a director, and he's like, why don't you do it? Why don't you do it? And so was very encouraged by his partners and stuff to sort of go ahead and do it. And it's not self-indulgent. You're not like seeing, it's not a big ego trip. It's it's a solid story. He also wanted to bring to light sort of issues going on in India.
I could give you a whole fucking list of movies that star and direct are awful to put yourself through.
It's not that at all. It's a very, very solid action film. And I am all right. Shut up! Stop talking. Anyway, right. It's a very, very solid action film. It's a good time. I'm glad Netflix dropped this so I could see this in a goddamn cinema. And yes, it's a good time. If you're an action fan, absolutely check it out.
Do you think they'll buy the rights to put it on Netflix?
The funny thing is, I can see this thing on Netflix in 6 months' time as well. Thatll be the fun. What this really overall did for me is that I'm really, really excited to see what Dev Patel does as a filmmaker next. He has said, I mean, after this, I think he was a bit kind of the amount of punishment it took to get something out. It sort of made him a bit jaded, perhaps, and he might not want to rush to go direct something again. But I really want to see him. I really actually want to see him do another action film. Learn from this, build up.
Even if he doesn't jump directly into directing another film, do you think his writing seems like a strong enough thing to have him, like, if you see written by blah blah and Dev Patel, you're gonna be like, I want to see that.
I'll absolutely be intrigued. I mean, and look, I just love seeing Dev Patel on screen as well. Like, he's a great star. I think he's a fantastic actor. But anyway, I'm going to give Monkey Man a 7 out of 10, and that will wrap up today's show. So thank you, Gonzalo, very much for joining.
Pleasure. Hope the chicken doesn't burn.
I've got 2 minutes. And thank you, Kyle, as well.
You're very welcome.
Your lighting changed to green. It's very.
I know. I was losing light in here, and I turned the light on. It's gone weird.
Very, very cold.
Drop my mic there. Anyway, on next week's episode, because I think it's just you and me, so we are going to be talking about Alex Garland and our favourite films of his, because Kyle will be away, and
I still won't have seen the movie because it's coming out on the 19th here. I'm so annoyed. I am so annoyed that you guys got to watch it first. But yeah.
That's just the way it is here, isn't it? Anyway, look, we just gave our opinions on Civil War, the Joker 2 trailer, the First Omen, and Monkey Man. But at the end of the day, those were our unwanted opinions. Thank you very much.